Good morning to all. Goedemorgen. Ik spreek geen Nederlands. I don't speak Dutch. I will continue in English. Dear Minister, Your Excellency, the Ambassador, first of all, thank you for organizing of this event. It's very important that we have some new ideas in the discussion about public transport. So I'm really grateful that the Dutch embassy is very proactive in that regard. So thank you for all the cooperation until now, and also for the future cooperation. Thank you for all the gentlemen that took your time to travel to Slovenia and to share your ideas. So my presentation, it will be a brief overview of where we are in Slovenia with regard to public transport. I deliberately will start with some general data of how we travel in this country. Why we travel, that you already know, but how is the structure of where our trips are? So 30% of all the trips are done for work reasons. Around 40% is done for leisure, escorting, for example, kids, and for shopping. Of course, the car is also in Slovenia the dominant mode of transport, and the worrying trends that Matej mentioned is that the occupancy is decreasing. So we have less than 2 persons on average per car, on a working day around 1.7. The number of registered vehicles is growing, and that's a trend that we would like to stop. And that is where public transport comes into picture, and that is why it's very important. So Slovenia is dispersely populated, so we have like around 40% of urban trips compared to, for example, Germany or Romania, where more than half or almost all trips are urban, of urban nature. So here we have suburban or interurban regional transport. That's why interurban bus transport and rail transport is very important as an alternative to commuting by car. We need to also stress that a big share of workplaces are in Ljubljana, around 27%. So that's why it attracts a lot of commuting on a daily basis, and of course around between 120 to 140,000 cars come in Ljubljana every day. It's a city of roughly 250 to 300,000 people, so a lot of space is taken by car on the roads, and also then to accommodate them, to park them. I calculated that roughly for the amount of for the number of cars that commute to Ljubljana, we need around 2 million square meters of parking spaces in the city. Why does it matter to develop public transport? So it's an accessible mode for all people. It's socially the most just way of transport in that regard. So we have a big problem with the, is this the pointer, with the household expenditures, which is linked to mobility poverty. I think Slovenia is the leader in Europe, that we have around 17% of the household incomes that we devote to mobility, which means that it's very expensive to cover all your needs with a car. Traffic congestion, especially around Ljubljana, is a big issue. It's also on the political agenda because people are complaining, businesses are complaining. The use of space that I already mentioned, a lot of space is used when you have low occupancy and a high number of cars. Of course, dependence on fossil fuels, still transport is largely dependent on fossil fuels. We have a very low share of electric vehicles at this stage, and it's not growing as fast as we would like to. Environment and climate is also very important. It was mentioned by our introductory speakers already that this is why it's important to move on and change, have a model shift towards more sustainable ways of transport. Let me explain, a little bit about passenger kilometers and the data we have. This is the share of bus transport and rail transport. The green is rail. The orange is intercity bus, and the blue is a city bus. In passenger kilometers, the data are until 2019. I will explain later on maybe that we also have a big issue with data, big problem with data, quality data and methodology. So that's why we cannot have a good comparison until we have a better data collection and data analysis. But you see between 2011 and 2019, the trend is stagnating. I deliberately didn't take the year 1990 because from 1990 until now, public transport declined significantly. And on the other hand, of course, individual passenger transport went up. What are our challenges? So in 2019, where I started working in this directorate, in this ministry, we had a big problem with public transport. So we started with two authorities that were actually managing public transport. The Ministry of Infrastructure was managing bus public service contracts with the inter-urban transport, bus transport. And then the Slovenian Infrastructure Agency was managing rail passenger transport. And of course, the cities, they were managing their own city bus transport. So it was managed within different entities and the cooperation between them was poor or almost non-existent. When we tried to address this, we found out that also our national legislative framework was inadequate. So we could not do much without changing that. We had only two-level management. That means that the strategic and the tactical daily management were in the ministry, which is inappropriate, and we did not see this model anywhere. So one strategic and tactical, the same level, and then you had the operators, was the second level. So we had to move on and create the intermediate level of tactical management by creating public transport authority. Then we had, of course, also staff and knowledge shortage. We only had in the ministry 11 employees that were dealing with the whole interurban bus transport, and another 3 employees in the agency that were dealing with the railway transport management. So this was horrifying, actually. But what we had was a contract for assistance with an external provider that were dealing with all the tasks that were not dealt with within the ministry. We had another challenge. That was it's the European PSO regulation that mandates member states to tender out public transport on competitive tenders. And 2019, in December, was the deadline to tender out. So when we came into office, the tender was not prepared. So we started, when the deadline was there, we started preparing the tender for bus PSO. And it took us quite some time to do it. The other challenge was insufficient data and backend information system. We see that also today still, that the systems and the data urgently need an update. Limited passenger focus, that's also the consequence because we were understaffed and we did not have this intermediate tactical daily management of public transport. So we had no passenger portal to support passenger with informations. All this information are still accessible through different providers of transport, not from the public transport authority as such. So what did we do then? Since we were a very small team, we didn't have the power to do everything ourselves. So we liaised with the DG Reform, with the European Commission, where we asked for technical assistance for structural reforms. So they co-financed the reform project, through which we approached our legislation, and we created a 3-layer management structure. As I said, it's the strategical, the tactical, and the operational level. We separated those, which is a model that's widely used in countries with developed public transport systems. We prepared a new law, Public Passenger Transport Management Act. It was adopted in April 22. So this combines rail and bus under one public transport authority. Then, after the law was adopted, we established the Public Passenger Transport Management Company. The idea was to be able to employ more staff and the quality staff that you need. So to develop the know-how for management. That company was established in November 22, and then in 23 and 24, we transferred the tasks to the company. First, management of rail services was transferred, and then in 2024, the bus operations. We also started working on the IT systems. We tendered external experts to prepare a project for the new IT system, the back office system, but also the ticketing, the timetabling. So this new tender is now in preparation, and we hope to be able to publish it this year. And then the PSO problem with the EU regulation, we then tendered, we prepared the competitive tender in December 21. It took us some time because of course, there was some issues with the tender, so we had to repeat it once. But then finally, we managed to sign the contracts in 2023. And then in July 24, we started with the new concession contracts. As Minister said already, we enlarged the scope by 20%. That's the opposite than in the Netherlands. So we went up, but that doesn't mean that we are not under pressure. We are, and I will tell you later on what's going on. Here are the results. So what do we see now? I'm here talking not passenger kilometers, but number of bus passengers, only those that pay for their tickets, because we have a large group that doesn't pay, have free tickets. And we see that we were really worried about the COVID crisis, where we had a big drop. But you know, it picked up very quickly, and we are already above the pre-COVID numbers in bus transport. And very similar in rail, it picked up very quickly, and in 2023 already, the passenger numbers volumes were above the pre-COVID 2029. I have to say that here also the new investment in the new rolling stock was a very important story. Slovenia had really outdated railway rolling stock, so with the procurement of the new trains, I think people were much more keen to use rail for commuting. And this is the free of charge tickets. Those were offered to retired people, to people above 65 years of age, to war veterans and disabled people. And this is only the number of issued tickets, so doesn't really show the rate of traveling of those people. But we see that the interest is quite high. We have more than 200,000 tickets issued, and those are tickets that are valid for indeterminate period of time, and they can use it wherever they want, however they want. You know. So no limitations. And I think that out of the 240,000 issued tickets, we have like 150,000 that are regularly used. In terms of planning the public transport needs and timetable planning, the company that was established, the public transport management company, is taking care to better align bus and rail timetables, so to allow for easier transfers. This is work in progress. Together with the railway company, we want to have those systems to actually communicate between each other, because, as I said before, they were managed by different entities, and there was no real communication. Also, we work a lot, or the company now works a lot with the local communities, where there is a big pressure also in order to reduce costs, especially for local communities, to integrate school bus lines, because the local communities, they were procuring themselves school bus lines. So wherever possible, we try to integrate those lines, school bus lines, into regular interurban public transport, which is not always to the delight of the concessionaries, but we are trying to reach some balance here. Digitalization and ticketing is a very important area. As I already mentioned, new IT back office system needs to be procured. I hope this year we will be able to do this. Passenger information portal that's missing. The company is now working a lot on data, on providing good quality data in appropriate formats to be able to offer better information services to traveling people. New ticketing options, that's very important. Now we have only closed-loop transit cards. We would like to get rid of still cash payments on buses, on interurban buses. That's very cumbersome, takes a lot of time, and it slows down the service. So we would like to introduce open loop, but we are looking also into other possibilities. It will all be part of the tender that I mentioned. We are also working on demand responsive transport. We have a big group, the persons with reduced mobility, that cannot access the current bus services, because buses themselves are not accessible, but also stations and bus stops are not adapted for access. And that's why we approached this group of passengers with on-demand transport. We are procuring now in 7 bigger cities in Slovenia on-demand transport for that community. But we will combine this also with the on-demand transport to address transport poverty. There is this social climate fund that the Commission prepared as an answer to greening of transport, and as you already mentioned, you know, everything is getting more and more expensive, and the costs for commuting in Slovenia are already very high. So that's why we need to act to offer people affordable solutions. Multimodality is a very important topic. So accessibility of stations, as Professor you already mentioned, it's a very important issue. It was a neglected area where everybody was just developing their own infrastructure and didn't think how this infrastructure fits into the environment. So now things are changing. Also, the railway manager, the railway infrastructure manager, understands that, you know, stations, train stations, and train stops need to be accessible to provide safe, secure parkings for bikes. To integrate better the stations in their environment. So multimodal hubs are also very important along the highway network, because we would like to reverse the trend of low car occupancy. So offer people the opportunity to leave their cars on the entrances to the highway, offer them parking areas, but also serve those parking areas with bus services where that's feasible, where there is demand. So these are some of the areas where we would like to make progress. And these are the future projects that we haven't touched yet, but we plan to do that. Alternative fuels in public transport. This is something that the Netherlands is 1 or 2 steps ahead. But City bus operators, they already procured many electric buses, Ljubljana, Maribor, Kran, Koper. They already ahead of the interurban transport where also the products are not yet that developed. So we will look into this. This year we will start preparing the strategy how to electrify the fleets of interurban buses. So hydrogen is another opportunity. We see the municipality of Ljubljana, they already procured 8 hydrogen buses, so we are very interested, of their experience, how this will work, and then we will see whether there is any possible synergies to use this technology also in interurban bus transport. So we need to address in this strategy, we need to address fleets, but also infrastructure, because you need to charge those buses, and that's sometimes a challenge. Well, I mentioned before that we also have challenges with rising costs. It's getting more and more expensive, so we also feel the pressure especially from the Ministry of Finance, that needs to provide for the financing. We also have a shortage of workforce, drivers especially, but also other experts, technicians, transport experts. Slovenia is a very small market, so to say, so we have limited number of experts that are available to help. That's why exchanges like today's is very important. Uncertain financing, military spending is now coming, so I think everybody will be looking where they can save money in order to increase the military spending, and I think public transport is also one of the areas that can be affected. So this is briefly, in a nutshell, what's going on in public transport in Slovenia. Thank you for your attention.
Please raise your hand.
Hi. You mentioned you have problem with data collection, so I'm wondering if you can elaborate a bit more about it. And maybe a sub-question for the previous speaker, who finances data collection in Netherlands, and how are these valuations going? Thank you.
Thank you. So data, of course, comes from public transport itself. So there is validators on board buses, trains. That equipment is outdated, sometimes doesn't work. Systems themselves can be improved in order to catch all the traveling people, especially in rail. The system is open, so you don't have fixed devices, for validating. But then also the back office systems, there we have problems because we have different kinds of tickets. With the introduction of the nationwide tickets, we don't get the exact data where people are traveling. We just know where they enter the bus or the train. We don't know where they go down. So we have problems with determining passenger kilometers. I know that in the Netherlands you have tap in, tap out, check in, check out system. So it's easier to get reliable data than in our case. But also just data management. As I told you before, the system is outdated. So the public transport authority needs more modern equipment and to be able to analyze the data and to work out better solutions. So that briefly is the issue that we are facing.
So there was a question for Niels, maybe just, who?
It was about financing our data schemes. Yeah, we have multiple data schemes. Maybe good to mention. So I showed the passenger satisfaction, which is a national initiative. So it's supported by national and also by the regional authorities. We also have the smart card system, as you mentioned, which is also a national collaboration between the national government, regional governments, and the operators. The operators are heavily involved in it as well. They also use this data for their own business intelligence. You can imagine that knowing where the passengers are is quite important. It's also a requirement if you want to join a tender. You need to provide equipment. You need to provide data, and that's a third level of data we have, which is already quite around for a while, is the vehicle data, AVL data, as we say in the national community, so automated vehicle location data, so where are the buses and what is the punctuality and the speed and everything. And what's interesting to know there and to share, it's that it's open data. So it's provided by the operators, it's required, it's also a collaboration of the institute I mentioned, and it's open data, so we as researchers did a lot of research with it to show the potential improvements, which I think is one of the benefits. And the other thing is that there were a lot of WizKids and company actually using that data to develop apps, especially with regard to travel information. So then it's actually the market, by offering the data, they come back with great tools and apps. I'm actually using, one of the apps I'm using on my phone is such an app which shows perfectly when the bus is where, etc. So that also stimulates innovation by providing the data. With smart card data, it's a bit tricky because there's also privacy involved and business intelligence involved. But vehicle data is the best to put open, I would say.
Yeah, it's also legal obligations. So yeah, we're trying to gather that data and make it public. It's legal obligation under EU law.
Darko Trajanov, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question as well.